What if I told you that sometimes a lifetime of study, debate, and tradition can be shaken by just 3 honest questions? Not 3 long sermons, not years of argument. Just 3 simple questions that pierce through layers of pride, fear, and inherited belief. This is the story of a Jewish scholar who had mastered scriptures, memorized laws, and defended his faith for decades, yet found himself standing at the edge of truth after a brief conversation. No crowd was watching, no stage was set, only sincerity met sincerity, and in that quiet moment, answers came that logic could not deny. Today, we explore how truth does not always arrive with thunder, but sometimes with whispers that change everything. Many people believe that knowledge alone is enough to lead a person to truth. They assume that if someone studies deeply, reads widely, and memorizes sacred texts, then guidance will naturally follow. But history shows us something very different. Knowledge without sincerity can become a barrier instead of a bridge. It can inflate the ego, strengthen pride, and convince a person that they already know enough. When this happens, learning no longer serves truth. It serves self-image. Sincerity begins where pride ends. A sincere person is not afraid to admit, "I may be wrong." This simple sentence is one of the hardest for human beings to say. It requires humility, courage, and honesty. Pride whispers the opposite. It says, "You are smarter than others. You are more experienced. You have invested too much to change now." Slowly, pride builds walls around the heart, making it impossible for light to enter. In religious and intellectual history, many great scholars failed, not because they lacked evidence, but because they lacked humility. They saw the signs, they understood the arguments, they recognized the patterns. Yet they hesitated, because accepting the truth would mean losing status, respect, or comfort. Their identity had become tied to their position. Changing their view felt like losing themselves. Man's sincerity, however, frees a person from this trap. A sincere seeker does not protect an image. He protects his conscience. He is more concerned about standing correctly before God than standing impressively before people. When he hears something that challenges him, he does not become defensive. He becomes reflective. Instead of asking, "How do I refute this?" he asks, "What if this is true?" Chimanja. This inner honesty transforms the way a person reads, listens, and thinks. The same book that once seemed ordinary now speaks directly to the heart. The same words that once felt distant now feel personal. Sincerity sharpens perception. Pride blurs it. When sincerity replaces pride, fear also disappears. Fear of criticism, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood. A sincere person understands that pleasing people is temporary, but pleasing God is eternal. He learns that dignity does not come from never changing, but from changing for the right reason. In the story of the scholar who accepted truth after 3 questions, the turning point was not the questions themselves. It was his willingness to answer them honestly. He allowed truth to be greater than his reputation. He chose humility over honor, conscience over comfort, and sincerity over pride. And in doing so, he found what pride had hidden from him for years: clarity, peace, and genuine faith. From the earliest days of human history, one pattern appears again and again. Whenever people drift away from righteousness, God sends guidance to bring them back. This guidance does not appear randomly, nor does it belong to one generation alone. It flows continuously through time, like a river that never dries, nourishing humanity in every era. The continuity of divine guidance is one of the strongest signs of God's mercy, wisdom, and concern for His creation. Human beings are not static. Societies change, cultures evolve, languages shift, moral values rise and fall. With every generation, new challenges emerge, and old teachings are often forgotten, distorted, or misused. If God had sent guidance only once and then remained silent forever, humanity would be left struggling in confusion. But divine wisdom does not abandon people to their weaknesses. Instead, revelation comes repeatedly, reminding humanity of its purpose and correcting its path. Throughout sacred history, we see this continuity clearly. Adam was guided. Noah was guided. Abraham was guided. Moses was guided. David, Solomon, and many others were guided. Each messenger spoke to a different people in a different time, yet their core message was the same: worship God alone, live justly, care for others, and prepare for accountability. The form changed, but the truth remained constant. This continuity shows that God's relationship with humanity is active, not distant. He does not simply create and abandon. He teaches, warns, forgives, and renews. When laws were misunderstood, new clarification came. When faith weakened, revival followed. When corruption spread, reform was sent. Guidance was never a one-time event. It was a living process. Some people assume that revelation must stop at a certain point, as if human beings suddenly became perfect and no longer needed reminders. History contradicts this idea. Wars, injustice, moral decline, and spiritual emptiness continue in every era. These realities themselves testify that humanity always needs divine direction. The need for guidance did not end. Therefore, divine mercy did not end either. The continuity of guidance also unites different faith traditions. It reminds us that prophets were not rivals, but links in the same chain. Each built upon the foundation laid before him. Each confirmed what came earlier and prepared for what would follow. Their mission was not to divide humanity, but to guide it step by step toward higher moral and spiritual awareness. Self-reflection before rejection is the doorway to wisdom. Without it, people reject truth blindly. With it, they reject only what truly deserves rejection. It teaches that the greatest judge of sincerity is not the mind alone, but the conscience. And when the conscience is awake, truth finds its way home. Many people assume that faith begins when questions end. They believe that doubt is dangerous and that asking questions weakens belief. As a result, some grow up learning to suppress curiosity, to remain silent about confusion, and to accept ideas. But true faith is not built on silence. It is built on sincere searching. Throughout history, questions have not destroyed belief. They have opened the doors to it. Being a sincere question is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of humility. When a person asks honestly, he is admitting that he does not know everything. He is acknowledging his limits and expressing a desire to learn. This attitude is deeply spiritual because it reflects dependence on God rather than on personal intelligence. Arrogance says, "I already know." Faith says, "Teach me." In heaven, temenfwers. Questions become dangerous only when they are asked with pride or mockery. Such questions are not meant to discover truth, but to defend falsehood. They are weapons, not keys. But when questions come from the heart, they unlock understanding. They push a person to read more carefully, listen more deeply, and think more responsibly. They transform passive belief into conscious conviction. In sacred history, many great believers began their journeys with questions. Abraham questioned the nature of idols. Moses questioned his own ability. The disciples questioned their understanding. Even prophets asked God for reassurance, not out of doubt, but out of longing for certainty. These questions did not weaken their faith. They strengthened it. Asking sincere questions also protects a person from blind imitation. Many people follow beliefs simply because they inherited them. They believe what their parents believed, their community believed, and their culture believed. While tradition can be valuable, it becomes dangerous when it replaces understanding. Questions force a person to take responsibility for his own faith. Instead of saying, "This is what I was taught," he begins to say, "This is what I am convinced of." Bend in the story of the Jewish scholar, 3 simple questions became turning points. They were not complex philosophical debates. They were honest, direct, and personal. Each question removed one layer of resistance. One challenged his understanding of history. One challenged his logic. One challenged his sincerity. Together, they opened a door he had kept closed for years. Damned questions also create dialogue instead of conflict. When people argue, hearts close. When they ask, hearts open. A good question invites reflection, not reaction. It gives space for truth to speak quietly. And faith that grows from questions is stronger than faith inherited without thought. It is tested, examined, and chosen consciously. Such faith does not collapse under pressure because it is rooted in understanding. Questions, when guided by sincerity, do not lead away from God. They lead directly to Him, turning uncertainty into conviction and curiosity into certainty